the golden age of WWE. Larger than life of fantasy. Step in the ring, feel history. Welcome to the golden WWE.
From a wedding main eventing SummerSlam to the Ultimate Warrior getting fired or suspended. We're going to talk about that on the Golden Era podcast with Sean Mooney at SummerSlam 91, Mooney.
SummerSlam! And
Yeah,
my
even
dog.
your dog's afraid.
Yeah, I scared him on that one. Boy, if we thought we knew about this SummerSlam, we didn't. You have dug deep, Steve Fall, and brought up things and found these notes that I didn't even know about, if you can believe it.
Wow, because there's a lot to this SummerSlam. Right. Just a big giant book of information. We're going to give that to you today. But SummerSlam 91 is very interesting because we're still holding on to the Hogan Sergeant Slaughter storyline, even though the Gulf Wars ended back in February. We're still holding on to a few other storylines, but the big one here is obviously the Ultimate Warrior. Now, the lore is he was fired immediately after the main event of SummerSlam 91. Not true. He's actually under contract and suspended until WrestleMania 8. Is that shocking to think that Vince McMahon would pay somebody to just sit at home for that long and the amount of money he was making?
Well, I don't know if you could say it's shocking. I mean, it was this legal document, and there'd been many others that, had been held to account when they're under these agreements, and they don't want them going somewhere else and, taking that character somewhere else, whatever they might want to call it as a gimmick, they still know it's that person. So it's protecting their product as well. But I'm surprised, too, to learn that, it wasn't, that he was still under contract was not really that surprising. But the fact that they kept paying him, I mean, they had reason, they had cause, I think, to have ended that contract because prior to the event, there was a lot of shenanigans, as you know, I like to refer to, before the event took place, missing dates and all few other things that were happening, which I'm sure we'll delve into, that, they could have found cause and severed that contract and say, we're not paying you. But I think also it was, Warrior was, especially since all the controversy surrounded it, he would have drawn anyway. It was, good or bad, And so I think that that was the biggest part of it, is just protecting the product.
Yeah, and the other big story is everyone believes that Warrior's holding up Vince McMahon, say the day before, like, I want all of this money, I want all these deals made now, and if I don't get them, I'm not going to come to SummerSlam, and that's not true either. This started 7 weeks before SummerSlam, so I'm glad we discovered the lore around that, because it always comes up with, he wanted money, he ran through the back, he got fired, he's gone, he comes back. Like, it's so interesting to think that so many of the information out there is not all correct. Is that shocking that somehow the wrong information from wrestlers got out there?
No. Let's make it real simple there. But that's the truth, and when we get there, we'll talk more about it. But the fact that this was, weeks and weeks in the making. The lore of it is that, right before the event, Warrior drops this on them and says, I'm basically hold you hostage and you better give me what I want. And there was a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, I think we talked about this before, how some wrestlers had to kind of put their foot down to get the things they wanted. And we brought up before, would Warrior have ever received all this money and all these extra bonuses for the things he was putting in if he didn't, I guess in a way, 7 weeks before this event, threaten him a little bit, saying, hey, I just want some more money for my hotline, my merch. I want to be equal to Hogan. Is that too much to ask for?
At the time, yeah. He hadn't earned it, in a sense. And as in one of Vince's responses, he basically goes through it and says, you're not on the same level as Hulk Hogan. You're not on that pay grade level after all he's done. Now, if you're measuring in time and business, the Hulkster, as far as where he had been, hadn't been that many years, but what he had accomplished during that period of time and what he had done for professional wrestling and the WWF at the time was leaps and bounds what the Warrior was doing, and the numbers also didn't back it up. He wasn't setting new records with the pay-per-views. He wasn't setting house records for gates. So it wasn't. He didn't have the chops there behind it to demand such a thing. And it's interesting, though, Steve, as I saw time and time again, and it's kind of simply the squeaky wheel or whatever you want to call it, but it blew me away how some of these guys, it was just the fact that they were just difficult to work with and demanding and egomaniacs that seemed to get the most from Vince McMahon. And the Ultimate Warrior is a classic example. Sid Justice comes to mind, who we'll be talking about today, with what he was able to get, as we'll talk about the money that when it comes right down to it, it was phenomenal to me. And it just seemed like the guys that were the biggest problems were the ones who got the most out of it. And I can just imagine, these guys, of course, like Bret Hart or, that showed up, did what they had to do, always to be counted on, tremendous in the ring, and they're getting crapped on in a sense.
I know.
And that's, I mentioned Bret Hart, and when we revealed what he got paid, it's just astounding to me. We're talking 91, so Bret hadn't really, gotten there to that big stage as we would see the heights that he would reach. But he was a main draw, and he was well recognized. And it just seemed like the guys that just did what they had to do, had learned the business and, played it the way they were supposed to do and did it right, were the losers in this in many, many cases. And this is I love, because you've got all the numbers. When we look at these, I think people are going to go, wow, that speaks volumes.
It's like, how did someone get paid so much and the other person didn't? But I'm glad you brought up the weird dynamic Vince McMahon as a father figure has to certain wrestlers, where sometimes you have a child and they're easy to work with, so you just let them do whatever they want because they're not going to bother you. But then you have the other child, the Warriors, you brought them up, the people like that, where they're in your face all the time yelling at you. Eventually you just like, fuck, fine, we'll do that. We're going to go get McDonald's for lunch, Warrior. You just break down and deal with it.
Didn't get the French fries.
But Mean Gene and Bobby Heenan did the same thing. Bobby Heenan always complimented the WWF and guess what? He didn't get brought back. Mean Gene Okerlund on that WCW hotline took giant dumps on the WWF every single week. He got brought back and had a whole show, Legends House, things of that nature. So I always bring up, like, if you are nice, Vince doesn't care. If you're mean to him, he's like, son of a bitch, I'll bring you back and I'm going to tell you what to do.
You know what? I guess I was not a big enough asshole.
Let's start right now.
Yeah, it's a little late. Yeah.
It is a little late. Warrior did write a letter to Vince McMahon in July of 91. Here are some of the things he mentions. He expressed frustration over lack of recognition and fair pay despite being the one. Detailed sacrifices over the past 5 years, personal life, physical health, creative achievements, felt his contributions exceeded those of other wrestlers, deserved equal pay also to Hulk Hogan. Criticized inconsistencies in the character direction. What character direction? And here is the money he wants. $550,000 for more money for WrestleMania 7. 4 days off every other time period except for pay-per-views. Same pay rate as Hogan, house shows, and big events. Equal revenue on the 1-900 Ultimate Warrior hotline. Equal merchandise royalties to Hogan. That's a lot to ask for someone who's only been doing this for a little while. And I love him as a character, but you brought up, does he deserve these things?
Yeah, he's not on that same plane. And, was he at the level to stand toe to toe with Hulk Hogan, and as far as the draw for these matches, that could be argued. But when you look at it in the big picture, and we've talked about this before, where guys you're an independent contractor. Each one of these matches you go into is they decide how much you're going to make, basically, and you've got to they take a look at the whole picture. Hulk Hogan had been a moneymaker for years now, and put them where they were at the time. But if it wasn't for him, they wouldn't have been where they were in the sports entertainment world. And so when you've got somebody who just thinks, okay, I'm in the ring with him, and people are here to see me too, and I want the same thing he got, the math didn't math out, as you would say here. And, the ego was, you got to give him credit for that, because to have that much self-confidence was pretty astounding.
And I forgot to mention that in the letter, he also emphasized that he would no longer apologize for requesting fair treatment. Of course.
Yeah,
but also
we need to go back though, Steve, where it really started, like where he, I mean, in many ways, he was very immature as far as how he reacted to things, and they kind of pinpoint where the things really turned, where the fairy tale became wicked, where he thought that Vince is my friend. Vince wants the best for me. This isn't just business. When he was asked to apologize to make a video, and this is up. I know they've got this on YouTube.
Oh yeah, I saw it.
Vince basically forced him to do an apology video to a kid that he had supposedly been rude to and refused an autograph to, which I say, yeah, did it happen? Yeah, probably, most likely. I'd seen him do that, just blow off kids before.
Yeah.
But this happened to be a general manager of one of the stations that aired the shows, his kid. And he did not take kindly to what happened. And I think he was there when this happened too, so he witnessed the whole thing. And they had to make good on this one. They had to make this guy happy. And if you watch that, Jim was pissed, and he did not want to do it. And that's what they say really is when everything turned. Everything changed.
Now, I can't imagine Warrior doing this a lot to kids, but I see wrestlers do this even in today's world. They're like, I'm in the airport, leave me alone, or I'm doing this. But if you're there and clearly, there's a father and then you're backstage, this isn't a normal situation where we're in the airport or at the mall. Like, we are clearly in an area of business, and we have a child who wants an autograph. And Bret Hart told the same story, kind of, where that's happened, where a Make-A-Wish kid, and Warrior was like, nah, I'm good, and left the Make-A-Wish kid.
That's right.
And,
yeah.
Jesus. And then Bret Hart is the one who came in, and at this, he made do. He did what was right as a person, not a fucking wrestler, as a person. It's a Make-A-Wish kid. It's not just a little kid. This is unfortunate what happens. And so these stories keep piling up with Warrior. And you're right. On YouTube, you can watch it. You can watch the before and after of Warrior going back and forth, and Vince giving him direction of, well, this is supposed to be in character. You're supposed to be apologizing. And Warrior yelling, I don't even know what I'm apologizing for.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're apologizing for? Business, man. You're screwing up the business that you work for. And if they don't have TV deals, you don't get your big paydays you want.
Yeah. And it also just shows the spectrum of emotions that the Warrior rode, and whatever was, if it was just his makeup or what he was putting into his body or whatever. But as I've said before, you never really knew which Jim you were going to see that day. And but kind of an overall rule when you're talking about these situations, if somebody is backstage and for whatever reason, you see a guy with their kids or something like that, and they're backstage, you've got to assume somehow they're a big deal to the company. You don't just get back there and get that close to talent unless you're somebody. and people can say what they want about privilege or whatever, but it's part of business.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys, a lot of them are involved in it, not only because it does, it's good business for them, but it comes right down to the thing is that my kid likes it. My son thinks I'm cool now because I've got a connection to the WWF. And I can go backstage with them. And then you go there and your hero basically destroys you. You're thinking like he just was not nice to me and, wouldn't sign my whatever. It's the people, the icons of business and everything. And they're stoic and nothing can shake them. Mess with their kids or something to do with their family. Yeah. Then it becomes emotional.
Mm-hmm.
And this was one of those situations, and it did. It changed the whole dynamic of the Ultimate Warrior, and then how he looked at business from that point on. To him, it was like, F them. Okay, now you want to play hardball? Okay, I'm in. And it was never the same.
That's true. Yeah, the dynamic.
That's where it changed.
The father-son dynamic of Warrior and Vince completely changes here. But Vince did write a letter back to Ultimate Warrior, even though they work in the same company, even though they probably see each other backstage. These letters are going back and forth, and this is the letter. Vince agrees to everything that Warrior wants. He even expresses regret for Warrior's stress. But he brought up how he really respected him as a friend and a performer. And then, of course, all hell breaks loose at SummerSlam 91. It's just interesting to think that it all starts from Warrior just really going big so quick, but then also disrespecting someone of power in front of their child. Because, again, imagine that. The car ride home with little Timmy and you're the dad driving home. Like, Daddy, why was the Ultimate Warrior so mean to me? God, this fucking asshole is ruining my life. Like, that's not just a level of bullshit. Like, I'd be so angry if I was that father that day and Warrior's there as just hero and he's a dick. Like Barney the dinosaur being an asshole.
Yeah, they and you could see they really tried to placate this guy, which they did. I mean, you go that far, you're going to make the guy
do an apology video.
Here, Johnny, this is from the Ultimate Warrior. He's really sorry. It was really a tough day for him or something,
Mm-hmm.
And then you have him do that. But you mentioned that letter that Vince writes to Jim, and it really is amazing. Like how he's having to massage all these superstars. That we talked about how coaches have to know how to handle their players. Well, this was kind of an example of that. Jim looked into Vince as this father figure. He really did.
Of course.
Didn't have a great relationship with his own father. And so, he really saw that. So then when he felt that Vince had betrayed him, but you see here in the writings, which is really very interesting, like you said, that even though they were typed, but the fact that you're exchanging letters back then, I could just imagine, I'm going to go down to the mailbox. Oh, here's something from Vince today. Like today, but it really shows that whole psychology behind it. Vince trying to, make him happy. Like, what do we need to do? And as we said, this whole thing, when it really fell apart at SummerSlam, was weeks in the making. Mm-hmm. And I have to wonder, because as you said, Vince gave him everything, and it wasn't just okay. Well, how about 450? It was,
right.
And you want equal billing every time you go with Hulk, or you get the same money, and you could do the 800 line. Okay, sure.
Yeah.
And I wonder if all that had happened between that time when he sent that letter, made that agreement to upgrade everything that he wanted in there, if they hadn't had all that happened in between that and SummerSlam, would that suspension have happened? If Warrior was just the model citizen, did everything he needed to do, didn't miss dates, wasn't a jerk to be around, wasn't hassling the agents, wasn't not working well with the boys or whatever, if that would have happened, would Vince have gone through all that, or was he already kind of decided, this guy is just too much of a problem, but we've got to get through SummerSlam. We've got this thing going. It's built up. We've got to get there. I wonder how that would have played out, but we know it didn't.
Right.
Warrior was being acting in many ways like a child. That everything he could do to kind of mess with the whole situation, he did. And when you're talking about these gates, which is the way everybody got paid back then, well, if he doesn't show up to these houses, you got a lot of pissed off people, and and you may get the gate that night, but word gets out, and they may not show up to the next couple of towns. When they, so you have to wonder what that situation and how that really played a part in bringing him down at that event.
You make a good point about the money and the gates too, and also if you're going to a house show or a Superstars taping, you expect to see some of these wrestlers. If they're not there, as you brought up earlier, there's a bunch of tapings before SummerSlam that are going to air after SummerSlam. Warrior missed all of them, so he's already missing from the next few weeks of television that is going to air after SummerSlam anyway. So it's really weird that Vince probably was like, okay, wait. He's missing from the shows after SummerSlam. Well, if I suspend him, and here's a question for you is, even if Warrior is a hassle, he's still asking for all this, and Vince agrees to this. Maybe if Vince agreed to it and he's still going to suspend him anyways, it doesn't matter. Warrior is still selling merchandise. Warrior is still a name brand. He is still someone who's creating buzz for your company. Was Warrior so hard to work with that Vince is like, well, I have to cut out the second guy who's making me the most money off merchandise because he's so hard to work with? Yeah,
but he wasn't the first.
Okay.
Say that. So it's not something they weren't used to dealing with.
All right.
And he's, as you said, that he's bringing money in. He's still bringing. So when he's out, if he's out of the company, sure, you're going to still sell some merchandise, but they've got to be seen. Mm-hmm. And as you said, these tapings and all this, they're planning ahead. And where he doesn't show up to these tapings, you're like, damn it, like what the hell? How do we keep selling this character when he doesn't appear for what we need? Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's a huge part of it. And but like you can't just cut him loose either, because who knows what what he could have done from there. Certainly they're thinking he's going to go south and take that character, whatever they call him, as a Dingo Warrior at some point, so they come up with Warrior or something, as they did, and so that it was a rock and a hard place for sure, and I'm sure they was trying everything they could to get to him, but he didn't really have anybody inside that he trusted, that they could say, hey, could you talk to him? He was an island, and he wasn't, it was just in many ways, no reasoning with him at all. It was just my way, highway, and that's it.
Man, well, he's out of here. He's no longer, he teams up with Hogan. So as a fan, you're thinking, wow, it's going to be Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior against these nasty Slaughter and Mustafa and Adnan, and Sid Justice will be the referee. Oh, who will he call it down the middle? Like that to me is a pretty good storyline heading into this event, because Warrior and Hogan are your two best. And it's interesting that they're continuing the Hulk Hogan Sergeant Slaughter storyline, because they had it at WrestleMania 7. Business was down, and rumors on bomb threats, so they didn't have it in the huge Coliseum. Believe what you want to believe. But the Gulf War ended in February of 1991. Why are we carrying that storyline into August? I get WrestleMania, you got to finish it, but why we were still going into August?
Well, I guess you didn't necessarily need a war to keep that going on, because it was still a heat generator. Yeah, and the bottom line was Slaughter. It wasn't so much what the subject was, and it was the fact that he was this patriot who would become, this anti-American. So you could sell that all day, and then you've got to somehow turn him back around to embrace his beloved country. So and it still was still working. So like anything else, you'll keep it going. But they did know it was time. They had to start finding a way to wrap it up. Mm-hmm. Sarge was still a huge draw as when we reveal the numbers.
Oh yeah,
he got a hell of a paycheck on this day too. So he was still way up there.
That's true. And let's talk about it, because the payday, we have all the numbers for all the wrestlers on SummerSlam 91. Sid Justice is a special guest referee. He is gigantic. He's huge. They're obviously building him up. $25,000 as the referee. I'm sorry. I love Sid Justice, but no one was like, hey, Daddy, can you bring me to SummerSlam? I want to see Sid Justice as the referee. $25,000.
Yeah, and he's another one that I never really understood. He was, talk about a problem to work with, and it came down to a lot of things with Sid. He was another guy that was just, wasn't in love with the business, wasn't passionate about it. It was a means for him to make a lot of money. It was, in a sense, easy for him to get where he did so quickly, in a sense. All the time, it was always something. He would decide, I want to go play softball instead of, he would walk in a second. And he's another one of those that just, I think, intrigued Vince McMahon to where it was like, well, why can't I control him? Why can't he, play ball with? I'm going to make him, want to do this.
Yes.
And just would throw money at him. And, Sid would be just like, whatever, how much I want this. And if you don't, then I don't care. I'm leaving.
Friends like, God damn it.
$25,000. When we reveal some of the numbers that these guys got for other matches, that he got to be the referee, $25,000 to show up that day is astounding to me. But he's another one right up there with Warrior that I just never understood how the equation worked. That he was popular, but come on, it wasn't never to me that over. No. And what they would do and the lengths they went to make him happy was pretty astounding.
I like how you compare Sid Justice to Warrior, because it's really true. Like, you just heard whatever, like Sid Justice. Yeah, the softball thing. It's how can someone love softball so much they'll throw away money? And is he being paid to play softball? Is he just down the street at the local park playing with his buddies? Like, what? What's the obsession with softball?
I know he did love softball, and he was a hell of a player. And it was, top level. It wasn't just.
He's not just playing with his buddies. All right.
Yeah, okay. No, it wasn't like that. But I just think it wasn't necessarily softball. It's just that I'm going to do whatever the hell I want to do. Whenever I want to do it. I don't care. I'm going to live my life that way, and there's nothing that important. And if I feel like doing that, okay, I'll do it. If not, screw it. I'm out.
All right. General Adnan got 12,000.
I mean, you have to admire it. We'd all love to live that way. But Sid could have made a lot more money in his career if he would have been just a little more, a little nicer. Just go along a little better. But that wasn't the way he lived his life, and so you got to respect that. I'll tell you, and admire it in many ways.
I don't have the numbers for his softball contracts, but we'll have to get those down and figure out how much he made from his softball games. General Adnan got 12,200. Colonel Mustafa, who's Iron Sheik, makes 25,000. Sergeant Slaughter got 50,000. Yeah. Warrior got 75,000, and Hulk Hogan got 75,000 plus a $15,000 bonus. And that's really the intriguing part about this contract situation, because where did that $15,000 bonus come from? Was that originally going to be split with Warrior and Hogan? And they were like, sorry, you're gone. You're suspended. Here you go, Hogan. Like, is that just a common thing? Or, hey, it's still Hulkamania. We're still running wild. Here's extra money because we know they came to see you too.
All right. Then this is good too. Now let's think about the Hulkster and the play here. Warrior demands equal pay. I want equal pay for the match. So Vince is like, oh, okay. But Hulkster, we know you're the guy. So gonna give it a little something on the side
cheese.
As whatever we're gonna call it, bonus, whatever. And to satisfy the Hulkster to say, well, yeah, but I ended up with more money than he did. It's, it's kind of that, like that mentality in the NFL or, baseball players. I mean, at some point, right, the millions it doesn't matter. I mean, how much more money are you going to spend in your life? But I want more than that guy.
Yes.
They've done the negotiations. I want to be the highest paid running back. I want to be the highest paid quarterback. And that may have had something to do with it. That we're just going to give you. Maybe it could have been $10,000, maybe $5,000 even. But I got more. And so call it what you want. A little bonus. And Warrior's not going to really know about this, but you do. And there you go.
Because that's interesting too. Like in a contract, it might say we make the same, but in reality, you don't see the tips coming. The tips that you're getting or the bonuses. Like, well, yeah, you might get the same amount of money with me, but you're really not because I'm getting these crazy bonuses and you're not.
Yeah,
that's so funny. Yeah, it was very interesting. And I saw that $15,000 bonus. I was like, damn, that's probably supposed to be some of Warriors, but he decided to run out of there and held hostage. But that's not the main event though of this pay-per-view. It's a wedding. The Macho Man Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth get married. Now, I have no problem with this, but I can't imagine in today's world where they're like, hey, so the main event of this pay-per-view that you're spending this money for is going to be a wedding. Tell me, as you worked there at the time, was it hard to sell this while you're in the event center and being like, oh, come see the match made in heaven and the match made in hell?
No, I think that people really wanted to see it.
Okay.
I've described it before. To me, it was like the Luke and Laura of professional wrestling. Now, if people remember General Hospital way back in the day. This is when I was in college. There was a storyline on the soap opera with Luke and Laura, and everybody watched every day. I remember going down to the student union and men and women, everybody was down there watching the episode it was on for an hour or something. It really captured the attention of the entire country. And as far as the professional world in wrestling, of course, the Macho Man and Elizabeth finally getting married. It was that big, and so it wasn't that tough of a sale to make, and people wanted to see it. Was it main event worthy? Well, in a sense, yeah, it was, because it was Macho Man Randy Savage and Elizabeth. That whole fairy tale. Everybody wanted the happy ending. People, tears, people crying, tears of happiness.
Mm-hmm.
I remember seeing in the crowd that that people wanted it. Yeah, and so to me, it wasn't a tough sell at all. It wasn't one of those, oh God, people wanted to see it.
The SummerSlam 91, there's just so many things that jump out, like Bret and Perfect or a wedding main eventing, Warrior, and all that stuff. Like, there's just so many, oh my God, moments on this whole event. But Macho Man Randy Savage makes $75,000 for this wedding. Miss Elizabeth gets $50,000.
Yeah.
Impressive. But I do love the videos they hype up where Macho Man wants to ask Elizabeth to marry her before this actual wedding. And he's like, Elizabeth. And he just keeps saying her name in every different tone. Elizabeth. And then finally, will you marry me? And oh yeah. And the crowd. Yeah, they show the crowd. People are crying. They were invested. You're right. How dare I even question a wedding could not be the main event of a pay-per-view, especially around this time.
And you see, Elizabeth getting $50,000 as a sidekick is pretty amazing too, which shows you the value that what they had created together. Where like when he came in and sold that idea to them, and they're kind of like, she doesn't know anything about wrestling, but she is very attractive, and but to what they built it up to be, they're selling merchandise with Elizabeth, That shows you there. I mean, I remember the poster, the aerobic outfit poster was, flying off the shelves, and so they measure everything, and to them, that duo was worth it. And between the two of them, taking $125,000 for that, which was a lot of money then for these appearances, and imagine what they were making together annually. It was quite a business.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
He's probably making a good chunk of money, and so is she. So they're the main event of this, but with Warrior getting suspended, they have to pivot because Warrior and Jake the Sixth Roberts are supposed to have a storyline heading into the fall. Well, that gets canceled, so we have to have a reception party for the wedding. And the Undertaker, in his lovely hat and gloves, he came dressed very appropriate for that wedding. Jake Roberts was also there. They open up the presents. It's beautiful. Oh, no. There's a snake. There's a king cobra in one of the boxes, and we're off to the races with a Macho Man who at WrestleMania 7 lost a retirement match. Now he's going to get reinstated by that damn President Jack Tunney as time would go on. Taker, $5,200 just to interrupt the wedding. The snake got $50,000 though. I'm just kidding, not the King Cobra, but Jake the Snake Roberts got $5,200. Paul Bearer got $3,700 just to appear on camera. Is that for expenses flying into these places, or is that actually for the performance?
Well, yeah, I mean that's it. They gave you tickets to get there, but everything else you paid for. Those guys paid for their hotels. Those guys paid for their meals, their transportation in between towns. So, that wasn't much of a payday for that. But that's kind of the way it worked. Is this whole system. When you look at all these numbers, and it's really fun to take a look at. Folks can Steve, you got to tell everybody where they can find it, because I think they'd really get a kick out of looking at this. But the breakdown, and it just the bottom line of it just shows you, okay, how much is this person worth to me at the time? And where did they come up with these numbers? Why did Bret get 17.5? Where for his match? Well,
like 5,200. Why are there 200? Like 5,000 sounds great, but throw another 200 on there. It sounds better.
Yeah. What is that? And so it's the science of it, or however they broke that down, is just kind of funny to me. And I think about the time where these guys, I was kind of surprised that at some of the payouts, like I said, with Bret, I would have thought that he would have, gotten more. But that's kind of the way it works. The system had not really changed as far as the promoters. The guys always talk about, these guys were always trying to find a way where they were going to get more and you were going to get less. And even in the WWF, WWE then, it would still work that way. That they would, you look at how, and then it would all break down what the talent cost was, and then what they took home. And of course, it was always a lot more.
Yeah.
But it really shows you that it was kind of this caste system that, where whatever your worth was to them, it kind of showed you where you were. And that's why it always comes down to people talk about, what's the value of me being a title holder? What's the, me getting a belt? Well,
money.
It is. It's all about money and where you're going to fall in line there. And that is how you measure it. And that's how it worked when these guys would go to these houses. And that's why they would always say when, the Hulkster was going to show up, it was going to be a good night. Everybody went around shaking hands. Well, the reason they're shaking hands is that you're putting money on the table. And until that changed, or people actually had contracts, guaranteed money, you just, prayed it was going to be a good house. And that's the way you lived your life. And there was some nights it would be terrible. Maybe you're getting in the hundreds. And other nights, a few thousand. But you're like a vagabond. You're traveling from these different towns, and they were totally at the mercy of the gates, as they were in a sense here with the pay-per-view revenue.
I know it's so funny though, because you're talking about
next one and the next one and the next.
Oh yeah, Yeah, it's like a circus. You got to keep going. You keep going to keep making you money. But the WWF also had a hotline you could call and leave your thoughts to Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth for their wedding. And during the broadcast, they kept going backstage to Macho Man in his dressing room, getting ready for the wedding. They don't show Miss Elizabeth. You don't want to show the bride in her dress first. Can't do that. It's against the rules, obviously. But you can call this number, like grab your parents' credit card to call the Macho Man, little Timmy, and tell Macho that you're excited for his wedding. Like that's, we talked about before where they did that shit with Hogan getting a mailing list for being injured. So you send in letters to get a catalog sent to your house eventually. This is just another brilliant way to just squeeze out some more pennies for Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth. That's why she probably got $50,000.
Well, overall, the idea of that 800 number was brilliant, if you think about it. That, the longer they could keep you on the line, it was ticking. And you know how many parents across the country would get that phone bill and like, Timmy, what the,
What'd you do to Macho Man for 10 minutes?
Right. And, but that's, the old days, that's the way it worked. So they would get on there and they would just keep talking and just keep you on the line. They would have these recordings that would just go and, they would go for minutes and minutes and minutes. Gene Okerlund, talked about before that made him rich, not at the WWE, but when he went down south, and that was part of his deal is that, I want this, I'm going to do an 800 line, and made a fortune until they realized, like, holy crap, look how much money he's making. But they were always, as you said, like the catalog idea. I mean, the WWE had these brilliant marketing people. Vince really found these people that were just tremendous. I think Bob Collins, who was one of I've talked about him before, and I think that he had at one point worked for Barnum, and really knew about how do you get people and how you sell and how you promote this stuff. And a lot of these people came from other backgrounds and brought that knowledge to the WWF. And then, and what was great about it with Vince and company is that they're like, yeah, let's go do it. Yeah, that's great. And, they set the stage for a lot of people by doing that. And it really is incredible. And that is just another example that brought in, thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yep. Gotta talk to Macho Man while I was getting dressed for his wedding. Oh yeah, putting my boots on. Yep, got my tie. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, oh, cool. Like, what's your favorite match? And he's just like a recording going. Yep, getting my tux on. No, I want to ask you a question, Macho Man. Just like a damn recording going over and over again. That'd be.
What was that though? That you could call up, and besides the cost, but you're getting kind of a behind the scenes. You're not necessarily talking one-on-one with them, but you're getting this inside look of what's happening behind the scenes, which they, as we see, they would just continue to capitalize on this and keep doing that as we would keep seeing more and more stuff, these bits that were done backstage. Well, they knew that they saw that people loved that, and you didn't really see that in other sports entertainment, and they really capitalized on it, and it's grown to what it is today.
Well, like years later during the Royal Rumble, you could call during the Royal Rumble and they would give away who was coming out next. So you could sit on the line for 45 minutes or an hour and just hear, next up is Bash and Booger. Next up is Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Next up is, and they would just tell you over the phone, like that's crazy amount of money being made there. But also speaking of money though, Ric Flair is talked about. He's advertised at the SummerSlam, but he hasn't made an appearance on television yet. You'll be part of that in the future, but yet they showcase him. Bobby Heenan takes his headset off from the broadcast booth, goes backstage with the real World Heavyweight Championship, the big gold belt that Ric Flair left with from WCW, and he presents it to Hulk Hogan. It's just a door that's opened. It's supposed to be Hulk Hogan's locker room, but you don't actually see Hogan. Maybe that 15,000 bonus was just standing there. So they're advertising Flair when he's technically not under contract yet. Is that a risky move? Because easily, maybe WCW could have been like, listen, Jim Herd made a mistake. We don't want you to be Spartacus. We don't want you to have an earring. Please come back.
Well, it's putting the buzz out there. So what do they have to lose? So it doesn't happen. Everybody's disappointed. What happens then? You know, you just come up with another storyline of why it didn't happen. But in the meantime, you're putting that out there. You're getting all this buzz over it and the speculation. Yeah, I don't think it was a real gamble at all because, like you said, if it didn't happen, people might initially be let down. But what are they going to do? And they're not going to turn off the channel. They're not going to stop watching. So yeah, I don't think that was an issue at all. And I think they really believed it was going to happen. One way or the other, it was going to happen.
You were there for that historic moment as well. We did a whole podcast about Ric Flair coming into the WWF and why him and Hogan didn't wrestle at WrestleMania 8, which is a great listen. And also what's strange about this before we get to the matches is this SummerSlam actually outperformed WrestleMania 7. More people bought this pay-per-view than WrestleMania 7. That to me is a shocker. When I found that information out, I'm like, how is that possible?
Sweating, of course. The sweating.
That's exactly what was I thinking?
No,
who cares about WrestleMania 7, the name brand, and Warrior and Savage and Hogan and Slaughter? God damn it, Miss Elizabeth's getting married, folks. Get your best,
right.
get your Sunday best on.
Yeah.
God damn it, that's so funny. All right, let's move on though.
It is amazing though that this event outdrew WrestleMania.
That's to me, it's just shocking to hear that I found that out. But the first matchup is Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, but they don't call him Ricky Steamboat; they call him the Dragon. British Bulldog and Texas Tornado take on the Warlord, Hercules, and Paul Roma, Power and Glory. The numbers, though, Bulldog gets $6,000. He's paid the most here. Tornado gets $5,000. Ricky Steamboat gets $5,000. Warlord gets $5,000. Hercules gets $5,000. Paul Roma also gets $5,000. Why the extra $1,000 for Bulldog?
Well, it's simple. He was a bigger marquee to them for that match. Yeah. And he was very popular at the time. So not astounding. And remember, everybody's working their own deals, every one of them. And it's not like they're saying, okay, this is what we're going to pay you. What do you want? But, you also don't know all the background to this of, if you do this, then we'll take care of you at Survivor Series. We'll take care of you there. We'll take you there at SummerSlam. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of that going on and make goods. And, in a situation like this, I mean, you look at that and, I saw that and I didn't go, well, why did he get more? I kind of understood at the time where the kind of draw that the Bulldog was. And, that's where he was at the time. And another $1,000, it was another thing of, you got more than them. And you get that kind of that pump from it, basically.
See, I'm highly doubted, but I'm guessing wrestlers don't share their paydays with other wrestlers for many reasons. Because of wait a minute, you got an extra $1,000 or you got an extra $200. I can't imagine that being over there. But Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, he's the dragon. He's blowing fire, and I honestly have no problem with this matchup. The whole time the crowd is electric for this pay-per-view, every matchup. But it is sad to see that this is the end of Kerry Von Erich, Texas Tornado. He won't be in the WWF for very long after this. Were you noticing at this point in time, they're just putting him out there because they think we can still get some more miles on him?
Yeah, and then they had him under contract to appear. But you could see the cracks, I guess. There was a lot going on with him. Mm-hmm. And you could kind of see it. That I don't know how really to explain other than there was just something off. Mm. And whether it was a time, because I think I was more naive than most because I wasn't out there every day on the road with these guys, or could see the difference in him day to day. And I don't know if his drug use had increased at that point. Was it, being on the road and that toll that it was taking? But you heard things about how I think he would miss some dates. He wasn't as sharp in the ring. He was, forgetting moves or finishes, and you could just see it. He was just kind of out of it. And it's sad, as we've discussed before, but you could see that was kind of the beginning of the end there for him, and it's just too damn bad, because he was such a great person with one thing, and then just a tremendous performer too. And remember what he did this with, basically without a foot,
right?
And did what he did, but we don't know what was going on in that skin. I can't imagine that he didn't suffer a lot physically just from doing what he did, and and he had that addictive personality, that those demons, and it's really sad because it wasn't a long run.
No, and again, it was a great quick run in the WWF, but obviously he was such a popular star before that. Moving on though, the match of the night, probably one of the top 25 matches in WWF history. It's the Intercontinental Championship. It's Mr. Perfect losing to Bret the Hitman Hart, with Stu and Helen Hart in the crowd, and they're watching their baby boy, one of their baby boys, win the IC title. It's his first singles championship. Mr. Perfect made $22,000. Bret Hart made $17,500. Now, the backstory to this, Mr. Perfect's back is destroyed. He has not been wrestling all summer on the house shows. He's been just resting up for this one matchup because he wants to make sure that he can perform and put Bret Hart over. Now, a lot of wrestlers are me, me, me. This instance, Mr. Perfect isn't about me, me, me. It's about you, you, you. And he's out there making sure that he can make Bret Hart something more than he already is. That, to me, makes Mr. Perfect one of the greatest wrestlers and human beings of all time.
Yeah, and if people realize what he was experiencing at the time, his back was a mess, and really, where you'd see him backstage, and he, just the way he moved. If you've ever had a bad back, a lower bad back, and because it's kind of the central point of your entire movement, your whole, how your body moves, and you could just see the way he would walk, and try not to be obvious about it, but you could see the pain that he was in, and I'm just astounded that at least even that day that he was able to even go out there. And as we would see, I think this would be one of his final matches for a while after that, because he had to get it taken care of. But yeah, you talk about being selfless in a sense, or getting the business done, and his respect for Bret was very clear. And I think there's a spot they talk about in the matchup where Kurt's can't get around that well or whatever, and he says to Bret, do whatever you got to do to get me back in, because I can't do it. I think he ripped his tights, trying to get him.
Yeah.
But that just shows you, man, that, oh my God, and still have a great match. And most people didn't have an idea of what he was experiencing, physically and mentally that day.
That's shocking to think too, because you're right about that. Mr. Perfect's not supposed to be out there. Physically, his body can't do this, but yet he puts on a 20-minute match, steals the show, has one of the best matches of all time, one of Bret Hart's best matches of all time too, while he needs surgery on a lower back injury. To me, that is impressive. And I watched this match for the first time in a long time recently. And after watching it, every time I thought it was about to be over, I was like, oh, okay, it's about to end. It kept going, and I thought, this match is tricking me, even though I know the ending. And that, to me, made it wow, this is very special, because I've seen this match before a bunch of times. But now, it feels like I'm watching it for the first time again. So if no one's ever watched this, please, go back. I know people always say, go back, watch that match and this match. This is one of those matches you really should go back and watch.
Yeah. Because, considering the physical pain that Kurt was in, they could have made it great and short, but that wasn't how they operated. That wasn't how he operated. And like you said, just thinking that, and I remember, I didn't know what they had planned or what it was going to go. But I remember thinking the same thing. Okay, now they're going to get this thing done with. Now they're going to wrap it. It's great. Okay, now they can, and just keep going.
Yes.
It showed you just what a tremendous athlete. Not just Bret, but I mean, but really perfect that day, Kurt that day. And it's almost like they go to another place where they just turn off those pain receptors, because you think of all like the snap suplexes and the going down. You got to imagine that's got to be like hot rods going into your spine, and yet you don't flinch. Really just well worth the watch of that, and especially when now, I mean, really what was going on behind the scenes for these guys in this match.
One of my favorite things, though, is after the match, Lord Alfred Hayes is in the crowd, and he's like, Stu and Helen, give me some, what do you want? I want to get you words. And you hear Stu's like, he's like, oh, the words of, oh, God, it's amazing. And Bret Hart leaves the ring, goes into the crowd, goes to hug, and there's Lord still trying to get the report, like, Bret, Stu, Helen, any thoughts? I guess, back to you. Like, he just was there having a good time. And that made me laugh my ass off because, like, man, Lord Alfred Hayes was trying to get something out of Stu and Helen, and they weren't giving him nothing.
Well, Stu wasn't the greatest orator. I don't think during his career he had to cut many promos. I think he just beat people up. But the character of it, and it was awesome. They were at a lot of shows. They would come down for the pay-per-views and that kind of thing, and they would be in the crowd. But you weren't going to get these words of wisdom, but it was just capturing the whole scene. And then you've got Bret there with his parents. That's all that needed to be said, in a sense, just to be able to witness that. But Alfred was classic, his lordship.
He's the best. He's so entertaining here every time they show him. But Mr. Perfect is no longer managed by the Genius or Bobby Heenan. He's managed by Coach. And so I had to go do some research because I said to myself last time we talked about him, who the hell is Coach and what are you doing here? According to the story is, he is a retired professional wrestler. He made $3,000 just being here as the manager for Mr. Perfect. He was a huge star in the LA territory, fought Freddie Blassie a bunch of times, even beat Gorilla Monsoon. So that's who Coach is. He's a former wrestler, and he's here because he was loyal to the company, and they're loyal to him, and brought him in as the coach. And that's all he is. And it was just shocking to think. I was like, who the hell is this person? Why is he here? Because he just did a good thing, and Vince sometimes rewards good people, and he did here for the coach. So there you go.
Yeah, that's pretty much the way it worked. That you had a lot of guys that had connections, and Vince would try and take care of these guys here and there when he could. And it was kind of a little salute to, have him come out because, as you said, that he had some deep connections and roots to a lot of these guys that had helped Vince. And, they probably said, hey, give him a little something here, bring him in. Who knows, it might have taken off and he could have had something longer, but it was what it was. And, got a bit of a payday there, but you'd see that happen a lot. A lot of those agents that were backstage that, most WWF fans had no idea who they were, but these guys, Tony Gurria, Chief, Jay Strongbow, and, all these guys, Vince took care of. I'm not saying they weren't great at their jobs, and it was good, it was probably made a lot of sense to have people managing these guys on the road in these different places, the guys that had done it. But there were, many guys that didn't save their money or, invest well, or of course back then they didn't make big money, that he took care of. And many of them were agents. They became agents, backstage guys. They were the guys that you would see when there was some kind of brawl out in the ring.
I always
The
love
neighbors
that.
come out and they're the ones breaking it up. And if you knew your history, you're like, hey, wait a minute, that's
Well, you always see like Dave Hebner too. Like, oh, there's Dave Hebner. Like, there's all these. Pat Patterson is always part of that group, and eventually Joe Briscoe and all that stuff. It's just funny to see that. Next up, though, the storyline for this match is it's Natural Disasters versus the Bushwhackers. Now, Andre the Giant on television, Jimmy Hart wants to be his manager because Andre's like, I'm going to get back in the ring. I'm going to wrestle again. And Jimmy's like, I want to be your manager. And Andre's a babyface, so he won't take that. Earthquake attacks Andre, which sets up kind of this matchup. But in reality, Andre can't wrestle anymore. So they figured out how to remove him from television by having Earthquake take him out. How close do you think Andre was like, I'm going to wrestle no matter what, even though he unfortunately has those crutches?
Yeah. As we've mentioned, Andre just loved being there, and it was his life. And it was kind of obvious at this time that, he was physically breaking down where there wasn't a whole lot he could do. I mean, to get him up on the apron was a major accomplishment there. And because he was in a lot of pain, and that had a lot to do with his back. But I think that probably maybe in Andre's mind is like, we're going to get this fixed, and then I can, maybe I got a couple more years left in me. But yeah, it was pretty obvious here that they kind of created this situation so that they could, keep him involved in a sense, but that at the same time it was time to kind of gracefully try and find a way to, have him bow out. But I don't think that, Andre looked at it that way.
Well, he gets paid the most in this matchup. He gets $8,500 to sit in the corner of the Bushwhackers. Bushwhackers got $7,000 each. Typhoon got $7,000, but Earthquake, who was the main event of SummerSlam 1990, gets $7,200. So he gets a little extra money on top there because it's Earthquake. I understand why there. Andre getting $8,500. Is that a respect thing?
Yeah, and I don't think anybody would argue that. Just Andre just being there was the $8,500. So that's all he really had to do. People wanted to see him, and I don't think anybody begrudged that. It probably wasn't common knowledge, but as far as Vince telling him, you're still important to us, I think.
Did the Bushwhackers ever lick you, Mr. Mooney?
Oh, yeah, it's well documented. One of my first pay-per-views, as they're coming out of the ring, I got
doused.
Just licked. I got doused in tongue. And I remember saying back to Gorilla when I was throwing it back to them, I said, do you ever have a dog that really liked you? Because that was my first real experience. I don't think any other human had ever done that to me.
Well, that
so
we know of.
Too. And it happened more than once. They would they love to do that to anyone. But they when they got their opportunity, they razzed me.
We like sardines,
and
then they'd lick your face.
I told you they were rugby players, and I played rugby in college, so that we had an instant connection to that. So they were fond of me, and so whenever they got a chance to mess with me, they took full advantage.
Nice. Natural Disasters win the matchup. After they go to attack Andre, Legion of Doom makes the save. Now we'll get to that match later, but we haven't seen the Legion of Doom in quite a while for reasons. But the $1 Million Man is up next against Virgil. We're finally get the payoff of this 3-year storyline of $1 Million Man abusing Virgil for years. The $1 Million Championship is also on the line. $1 Million Man now has Sherry. Now, is this just a common thing where, like, hey, you're a bad guy, so you need a manager? Or because Sherry went from Macho King, and then after $1 Million Man, who she calls my teddy bear, then she goes to Shawn Michaels. Like, every time she goes to someone, they're already a star or they're going to become a star. Is that just a credit to Sherry's work?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. That it was that she wasn't just a sidekick, something to look at or a distraction. Sherry could generate the heat. And I also think that Vince liked the idea that a woman was doing this. And, Sherry, well documented, delivered as good as she got. And so it was a great dynamic. Never really before had you seen a woman really be able to stand up to a man and didn't matter what size they were. She was, let's go.
Yeah.
And as I've mentioned many times, where if somebody didn't lay something in, if she was supposed to get a clothesline or knocked out of the ring or smacked or whatever, if you didn't deliver, she would. That receipt to her was coming, and she did that more than once, the guys, and they wised up quickly. If we're working, we're working. You treat me just like you do everybody else out there. And I think that, Vince really liked that, and it did. She generated a lot of heat, and so, for her to be with Ted just raised the temperature. It wasn't just like, what do we do with her? There was a reason they put her with him, and I don't know. You'd say like the big payoff with Virgil and Ted. I guess it was as hot as it could be. But
the crowd loved it.
Yeah. But I think that after that, okay, it was supposed to be they were going to be going on and carrying this on, and they kind of realized, well, no, that was the payoff.
Yes.
Nobody's really interested in seeing, Virgil go around with $1 million belt, taking on people, and so shortly after, Ted got that bejeweled belt back.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. You're right, because like this storyline is going up. All right, we got to the perfect ending. Virgil gets the championship. He finally beats his boss. Yeah, he's champion. Well, what do we do next?
Yeah.
$1 Million Man eventually just gets the championship back, and then Virgil goes off into just being a good hand to put over other bad heels. $1 Million Man eventually her and Sherry break up. He forms a tag team with IRS. You have Money Inc. Then he becomes a tag team champion. So there's a lot more for the $1 Million Man on here than Virgil. Now, I love the payoff. Like, again, if you watch this event, the crowd goes crazy for everything, no matter even Andre and Bushwhackers, and there's nothing here that anyone goes, I'm going to the bathroom. Like, no, everyone is in their seats enjoying the entire event. And I loved Virgil.
Yeah, they wanted the payoff. They wanted Virgil to get have his day.
Yes.
And he got it. And so, and it was great. And that run for Virgil was the gimmick run of a lifetime.
Yep.
For him. But as you said, what do you do after? He was not going to be that guy. He was okay in the ring, an okay hand. You could put him in there, but that was it. So that run as Virgil was the greatest gift in his life, and he was perfect for it and did a tremendous job.
Right.
But after that, like you say, what do you do with him? What?
I think people forget about that with wrestlers. Like, there's been TV shows, you only have like 8 seasons of a show, so you usually have 6 main characters, and that's what you're into. And then once that show's over, you only look at those actors as those characters. They can't really move on. Virgil, amazing 3-year storyline. Well, that was great for the story we had for you. Next up, we don't have anything else for you. And, go off and go to WCW, 4 years from now. But I think the greatest thing from the SummerSlam is not a wedding main eventing and Warrior and Perfect. It's the Jailhouse match between the Big Boss Man and the Mountie. Talk about sports entertainment at its finest, because Mountie versus police officer, it's so brilliant. The Mountie got $20,000 for his performance here tonight. Big Boss Man got $17,000. Jimmy Hart, who is the manager of the Mountie, got $10,000. Now, I've interviewed Jacques, and I think you have as well, and he has such fond memories of the tapings of what happens when he gets arrested. They bring him in the paddy wagon. They bring him to the police station. He gives the middle finger to the police officer. It's like, how excited do you think he was for that? Because he doesn't have to go out there and wrestle. Like, he has to do like method acting here inside this jailhouse.
Well, I mean, Jacques loved it all, and and credit to him that we talk about the era of tag teams, and he was part of that
Oh yeah.
with the Rougeau brothers when we said they had legit tag teams where that division. I think it seemed as there were as many tag teams as there were singles.
100%.
And he was a part of that, and the Rougeau brothers were over big time with him and Ray. So the fact that Jacques went on with the gimmick with the Mountie and was as popular shows you right there that he was worth a lot. They paid him $20,000 that day for this matchup, more than the Boss Man. Shows just how over that character was, and he really pulled it off. Boss Man was tremendous.
The best.
He was one of the best, and this was a great storyline. But you could tell they did it. They had a lot of fun with this as far as shooting those vignettes where they go, and the whole thing about him getting arrested and put in the cell, and he just kind of melts, and is this he becomes like this coward, he speaks very fondly of that whole thing. That's what I know that's one of the highlights of his career as the Mountie. But it was that thing that kind of wrote itself in a sense. Like some of these storylines, you think that boy they really had to think on that one. Well, not for this one. This was great.
No, I'm a police officer. You're a Mountie. We both disagree on the law. You're abusing it. I'm not. Let's fight. And again, the best part is the aftermath, because backstage you're interviewing Bret Hart after you won the title. Like, you're interviewing other wrestlers. Mean Gene's doing it. You guys keep going back and forth ping-ponging, but you keep going back to the Jailhouse footage. Like, I got more footage as you're talking, and you're like, let's go back. And then there he is. Now, and they throw him in the jail cell, and there's another man in there, and they suggest that things are going to happen between these two men. Like, that to me is just so damn funny for the time, and you're all enjoying it. Yeah. You're all enjoying it because
Vince loved that humor, that the innuendo.
Something bad's going to happen to him in jail. You don't drop the soap. You get it?
He's not going to walk the same again after this.
Yes, there was a lot of those jokes during the broadcast. Yeah. I just thought it was, again, this SummerSlam has so many weird elements to it. That's why I love the SummerSlam. Again, weddings and jailhouses, and it's just so crazy to think. But yeah, Mountie, $20,000. He earned his pay here tonight, folks. He won again. One of those moments where sometimes the things about wrestling isn't about the match. It's kind of like the storyline and the things that happen backstage. And this moment is one of those things of like, oh, I remember when Mountie was almost abused in a jail cell, and he gave the middle finger to a bunch of NYPD officers. Like, apparently those weren't real police officers. They were actors. And so you see their faces constantly down like this. So they're not maybe laughing or cackling at the Mountie doing his bit, which I thought was great.
Yeah. But, of course they script those to a sense, to a point, but a lot of that stuff was just off the cuff, which you have to give credit to Jacques, because some of the lines were hilarious. And, like I said, and him kind of wilting, and playing being tough, and then all of a sudden, kind of like, but come on. It was just fun to watch. And like I said, to his credit, a lot of that was just situational. He just went with it.
It was perfect. I want my phone call. Next up is the tag team titles are on the line. It's the Nasty Boys who won them at WrestleMania 7, taking on Legion of Doom. Now, we saw Legion of Doom earlier, yet here they are again. But we haven't seen the Legion of Doom in a while, because Hawk reportedly he failed a drug test, and he got suspended after WrestleMania 7. Why reward someone with tag team titles? Maybe to keep them in line, to realize, hey, there's a lot of money here. Don't keep failing drug tests.
I don't know if there was any reward in mind. It's all about draw. And they were a big draw. You think, well, I mean, if you've ever dealt with anybody who struggles with addiction, common sense doesn't really come into play.
Mm.
And you would have thought that, Mike would have valued that as much and what they had, the opportunities they had. But, you have to understand his demons and that that was a part of his life. It's unfortunate because Joe paid the price too. And back then, things would get overlooked for business. It wasn't, just patch the guy up and get him out there.
Yeah.
And so I think that the feeling was here, we'll just ride it as long as we can until it's so much of a disaster. We have to do something. Because, these guys, they were still this notorious, feared, incredibly popular tag team.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, you get the two of them out there in the ring, no matter if it was 3 minutes, 5 minutes, or 10 minutes, you do it. And they were marquee. They were money when they had those belts.
True. And each got $25,000 each. Nasty Boys got $17,500 each, plus $200 for the draw, according to the court records say that. So Nasty Boys beat the Hart Foundation at WrestleMania 7 to win the tag team titles. Then they lose them the next pay-per-view to LOD. Bret Hart, it's funny because he loses the tag team titles at WrestleMania 7, wins the Intercontinental title at SummerSlam. Like, what a jump for Bret Hart here. But for Legion of Doom, now they're tag team champions. They have a record. They're the first team at this point in time to win the AWA, NWA, and WWF tag team titles. So good for them. It's supposed to be a street fight, but yet there's a lot of cheating behind the referee's back, which I always was confused about. Like, if you want me to believe something, why are you cheating behind his back when in reality, cheating is legal in this matchup? I pondered for a minute, Mooney, while watching this.
Well,
maybe that's just me.
Yeah. Yeah, everything is like I talking to Barry Darsow recently, and he talks about we never want, if you go back and look, we never won a match without cheating. That was like their thing. They would do things that they could get away with, and so really, you're gonna argue semantics here or playing by the rules? That's just.
Do they have manager licenses? Huh? Is that allowed?
Yeah, but you did have to create the illusion of at least trying.
Yes.
And sometimes you'd have a referee in there that the best of the best guys like Joey Marella and Kyoto and all these guys, when they're in there, you were like, yeah, they're trying their best to keep this thing together, and they're trying their best, and they're on these guys like, knock this off, this is the rules like that, and you kind of bottle along. Well, then some would just be, there's just such chaos,
right?
Like, what the hell do they have anybody in there for? And then somebody gets swung around, and then ref gets hit, and he's down, and he's out, he's knocked out, like there was so many different ways to do it, but you had to have this illusion of some control for it to work.
Yes.
Yeah. So your point is well taken.
Thank you.
Well
I thought you were going to be like, you're stupid for thinking these things, Steve.
No.
We have IRS versus Greg the Hammer Valentine. Now, I said earlier there wasn't a match to go to the bathroom for. I apologize. I respect both men, but this is the match. If you were Timmy and you were holding it the whole time, this is where you go. IRS gets $5,100 according to the court records. Lowest on the show. Greg Valentine got $5,200. This is when Greg the Hammer Valentine is supposed to be a babyface, and so we're supposed to cheer the Hammer, yet he was in rhythm and blues with jet black hair before. I don't know. I'm sorry. Like, at this point, I'm like, Greg Valentine, I was tapped out as a fan for him at this time. IRS, relatively new, so they're starting something with him, but I wasn't feeling this matchup.
Yeah. And, Greg was just a great hand, as they say. But it mostly, I think, his loyalty and what he would do in the way. I mean, you could put him in there with anybody, but this match, like you said, just wasn't. I think it just could have been a lot better. I'm going to leave it at that. But
yeah,
you know, I don't know what else to say about that.
No, it's just really bizarre.
It
that
was surprising to me because
yeah,
I
like,
just expected, because Mike is really great, and you know, and Greg, when he was working what his shtick, what he did in there, I thought, you know, but you know, it doesn't always work when you get two guys in like that. And
no, this was not the way we wanted to go. Before we wrap this up, though, because on standby, you have talent who are just sitting backstage in case something else goes wrong where they have to perform. So you have the Rockers are backstage, Barbarian and Jimmy Snuka. They all get $2,200 just to sit backstage. Hacksaw Jim Duggan, $2,000. The Berserker got $1,700. Beverly Brothers, Orient Express, $1,200. Jim Neidhart, Bruce Beefcake, and Tito Santana all got $1,000 to sit backstage. That's a total of $31,100 of wrestlers sitting backstage, including Jake and Taker. So is that a common thing where you just bring in wrestlers in case something goes wrong and you're going to pay them?
That was pretty standard. You didn't know. I mean, right up to the day that, you know, these guys are working, some of them the night before, you don't know what's going to happen. So you've got to have everybody ready in place. And they even have, you know, okay, if this happens, okay, you're going to work with him. You're going to do this, you know. And so, yeah, that was not unusual at all to have kind of standby talent. And remember, you know, they would structure these around TV tapings too, so everybody was there anyway.
Okay, yeah.
And you know, for others, if it was basically a night off. But if you're still going to be asked to be somewhere, pay me. You know, I got to get paid to, you know, just because, you know, it's not like they were under contracts like what announcers were. We got paid a specific amount, and then we would just do whatever they told us to do and be wherever we were supposed to be. But these guys, it was day to day in a sense. And so if you're supposed to be at that arena for whatever reason, they're getting paid.
And in that little side note, though, Sid Justice, who's a referee, makes more money than all the wrestlers combined on paydays. So there's a little fun fact for you. But a match made in heaven, a match made in hell. I love the taglines, you know, ultimate challenge, gravest challenge, things of that nature. I love the tagline for this. But Madison Square Garden, always historic for wrestling, especially the SummerSlam, which has so much going on. Before we wrap this up, though, where do you put the SummerSlam for you? Like, you always say, I really love this event. I didn't like this event. How'd you feel about being part of this SummerSlam?
I thought it was I thought it was a good event because it did have you know, a great lineup of superstars. We weren't really lacking talent, and I thought, you know, many of the matches were pretty damn good. I liked the storylines. You know, like you mentioned, the Boss Man and the Mountie. I thought was a great angle. Everybody wanted to see the wedding. We finally got to see that. Virgil got his day to, you know, finally put his foot down and on the you know, on the head of Ted DiBiase, and then walk away with the $1 million belt. So yeah, it was all the way around. I thought it wasn't my favorite, but it was nice because it was at Madison Square Garden. We didn't have to travel too far. All of us from, you know, up in Stamford, we just got in the cars and went down there, and we're home not too late. So that was nice. But I thought it was a good event. I was, you know, it did pretty well too. So, you know, overall, I'd give it a 8 maybe on my favorite pay-per-views.
The Mooney meter. I like it. Gotta get the Mooney meter up there. Number 8 on the SummerSlam list. I like it. Yeah, I thought it was a fun show. And again, there's so many historical things about this. Of course, the Warrior story is the biggest thing to come out of this. That's not on air. But you know, after the SummerSlam, I remember you telling me, weren't you were backstage, and while Warrior was back with Vince, like, are you hearing commotions about that before we wrap this up? Because I think people would want to know, like, you're backstage. Are you hearing something?
Oh, you know, I've told the story before where, you know, we had these, you know, they kind of have these separators, like these blue curtains. I always remember they had the big stands, and that would be, you know, they'd make a makeshift locker room But it was just these thin blue covers. And yeah, you could hear that, and not screaming, but raised voices. And yeah, and then suddenly Warrior was heading out the door, literally.
Oh my God! Well,
yeah,
thank you.
The commotion, and it was the talk.
Yeah, I imagine, next day at work, hey, what's going on, guys? Anything happened last night? Yeah, Warrior got fired or suspended, depending who you listen to. But
he said suspended. I remember it was everybody got fired, and in a sense, as you said, that he might have still been paid, and you can call it technically a suspension, but it was big as far as the way people were looking at it. He got fired, and held the company hostage.
Well, he did that weekend at SummerSlam 91. Match made in heaven, match made in hell. But we had a great time here talking about SummerSlam 91. I'm C-Fall. He's Sean Mooney. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
It's the golden age of WWE. Larger than life.